Hey everyone, Katie here. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a quick note that we had some technical issues while recording this episode that I did not notice until I edited it. So there were some parts where the audio got cut out and didn't record. I tried to edit those as smoothly as possible, but if there's any sort of awkward jump in the conversation or silence at any point, I tried to catch them all. But if you notice it, that's what that is. So hopefully you'll bear with us while we still figure out our new recording equipment and everything. But we hope you enjoy, and let's get to the episode. Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. Okay. So how are you guys? Good?
Good.
Awesome.
Slurping nice warm tea.
Yeah, I love it. Sweaters.
Sweater
I know,
weather.
it's
So nice.
I saw a cute picture of you in a sweater earlier
I
today.
put it on, and then I sat at home for a little while, and I got warm, so I took it off, and then I forgot to grab it when I left the house. So I don't have a
Sweater
sweater.
season is the best season.
Today we are talking about Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which was my pick for the book club this week. So I have a not so quick summary, but it was a good summary. It's a couple paragraphs, so I'm just
sure
going to
it's
get through
shorter than
reading
the
it.
book.
It is shorter than the book. Okay. So Rebecca's narrative takes the form of a flashback. The heroine, who remains nameless, lives in Europe with her husband, Maxim de Winter, traveling from hotel to hotel, harboring memories of a beautiful home called Manderley. The story begins in her memories and how she and Maxim first met in Monte Carlo years before. In her flashback, the heroine is working as the young traveling companion to a wealthy American named Mrs. Van Hopper. In her flashback, Maxim is staying at the same hotel as the heroine and her employer, and after knowing the heroine for only a few weeks, he proposes marriage. She accepts, and he marries her and takes her back to his ancestral estate of Manderley. But a dark cloud hangs over their marriage. Maxim's first wife, Rebecca, drowned in a cove near Manderley the previous year, and her memory haunts the newlyweds' home. Rebecca's devoted housekeeper, the sinister Mrs. Danvers, is still in charge of Manderley, and she frightens and intimidates the new mistress. Despite the encouragement of the house overseer, Frank Crowley, and Maxim's sister Beatrice, the heroine struggles in her new life at Manderley. She feels she can never compare favorably to Rebecca, who is beautiful, talented, and brilliant, or so everyone says, and soon she feels that Maxim is still in love with his dead wife. Manderley traditionally hosts a costume ball each year, and it's soon time for the gala to take place. Swept up in the preparations, the heroine's spirit began to revive, but the ball ends in disaster. On Mrs. Danvers' suggestion that she wears a costume that it turns out is the same dress that Rebecca wore at the last ball. Upon seeing the heroine, Maxim is horrified, and the heroine becomes convinced that he will never love her, and that he is still devoted to Rebecca. The following day, Miss Danvers almost convinces our heroine to kill herself, and she only breaks away from the old woman's spell when rockets go off near the cove, signaling that a ship has run aground. When divers swim near the grounded ship, they find the wreckage of Rebecca's sailboat with Rebecca's dead body in the hole. The discovery prompts Maxim to tell our heroine the truth, that Rebecca was a malevolent, wicked woman who lived a secret life and carried on multiple affairs, including one with her first cousin, Jack Favell. On the night of her death, Maxim had demanded a divorce, and she refused and told him that she was pregnant with Favell's child. Furious, he seized a gun and shot her, and then sailed out to the harbor in Rebecca's boat and sank it with the body stowed safely inside. This revelation
tucked in there.
Yep, just tucked right in. This revelation restores the heroine's marriage and enables her to finally shake off the burden of Rebecca's
There's something wrong
ghost.
with that too, though.
Meanwhile,
We'll
however,
talk about
the
it.
noose of justice tightens around Maxim. First, it's found that holes have been drilled in the bottom of Rebecca's boat. Luckily, the coroner delivers a report of suicide rather than murder, but soon Rebecca's cousin Favell, certain that Rebecca did not kill herself, accuses Maxim of the crime. The local magistrate, Colonel Julian, investigates and finds that on the day of her death, Rebecca went up to London to see Dr. Baker. Favell, Maxim, and the heroine accompany Julian to London. The heroine is certain that Baker will reveal that Rebecca was pregnant, thus revealing Maxim's vengeful motive for murder. But instead, it turns out that Rebecca was dying of cancer.
Plot twist.
And that furthermore, she was infertile. She'd lied to Maxim about her pregnancy. Maxim assumes that Rebecca, knowing that she would die, manipulated him into killing her quickly. Mrs. Danvers had said after the inquiry that Rebecca feared nothing except dying a lingering death. Her terminal illness now supplies a motive for Rebecca's supposed suicide, and Maxim is saved. He and the heroine drive all night back to Vanderley, stopping only once when Maxim calls home and learns that Mrs. Danvers has disappeared. As they crest the ridge near the mansion, they look down and find it in flames. So that is how the book ends, with Manderley on fire. So, and you just finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just now. And then I re-listened to the first chapter because I was familiar with the story because I was completely fascinated by the original movie when I was in high school. Like, very fascinated. And then I picked the book up because my mom has it. She has several Daphne du Maurier books. And I couldn't remember why I didn't carry on because I do remember being absolutely fascinated with the movie. This was a hard book for me to finish, thus finishing 15 minutes before we met, because it goes on on. Like, at the same time in my life, I was supposed to read Test of the Dubervilles by Thomas Hardy.
Oh, that's a hard one to read.
Okay,
That is such a hard one to get through.
He describes like every flower in the moor. Like,
here's it's like reading Dickens. It's like reading
Dickens is easier.
It depends. It depends on the book.
Fair enough. Well, that's actually so funny.
I have a 700-page Dickens book that I only got through the first 200.
Oh, that's all?
I did get through Great Expectations. I don't know why.
Great Expectations.
I love that one.
I love David Copperfield.
The only Dickens I've read was Christmas Carol, and that's very short.
Yeah, and I like that one. That's a great one, which is why it carries on. But it's funny that you mentioned Dickens because this book was going on and on and on, and I was like, was this written as a periodical publication? Like, because that's one of the reasons Dickens goes on and on, is to extend his contracts and just fill pages. Because it went on and on and on. Yeah. I love the story still. Like, as I finished it, and we finally get through the rising action, and we get to the climax, I love how it turns out.
Yeah.
I love it still. But it is a time, and I haven't watched the new movie yet.
I did.
It's a time,
but I made myself finish the book first.
Well, I was trying to do that too.
Yeah. I finished the book a couple weeks ago, and I watched the new movie right when I finished the book, and I tried to find the old one to stream, but it's not streaming anywhere, so I couldn't watch it.
It's a very good movie.
I thought about going on some.
Well, and the old one's Alfred Hitchcock. So it has Alfred Hitchcock. It is an Alfred Hitchcock.
That's probably why I was fascinated with it.
Because there's a certain. The drama and the macabre of it.
Yeah. It converged on a time when I was fascinated with Hitchcock, probably.
Yeah. There's actually,
I'm always fascinated with Hitchcock.
Yeah. I was interested in, like, the adaptation, of the book. There's actually 5 different films it's been adapted to. Really? Wikipedia only told me about the Netflix one and the Hitchcock one, so I don't know about others. But it's also been adapted for television a couple times and radio a few times too. But I really wanted to watch the Hitchcock one. I just couldn't find it anywhere. So
very good.
Maybe someday I will watch it. I was reading the differences between the two because I did watch the new movie and they changed some things like a movie does.
Yeah.
And the old movie changes the ending nearly completely.
That's what I thought because this was not like it's the same sentiment. Like but Rebecca's the same monster.
But if you experience the Hitchcock movie first, the ending to this would feel a little unfamiliar or a little disconnected. Yeah. Not in a bad way, just different.
So I found some interesting information about that. It says, this is one of the questions that I have right now. It says, in the film directed by Hitchcock, because it was made during the Code era, the Hollywood production code, it required that if Maxim had murdered his wife, that he would have need to be punished for his crime. So they couldn't make him responsible for her death, otherwise they couldn't have a happy ending at the end. So Rebecca's death is made into an accident as opposed to a murder, although Maxim still talks about how he would have killed her anyway.
This is how I would have done it.
Right. I didn't do it, but if I did.
Thank you, OJ.
That must be the thing. Because I was like, this was an interesting surprise, the way that it was told. But I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
I usually don't read the afterwards, because usually when I'm done with the book, I'm done with it, and I don't really
there was an afterward?
There is an afterwards that in the Kindle version that is actually pretty interesting. It talks more about what was happening in the author's life during this time.
She's an interesting figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recommend looking. I mean, I just read through the Wikipedia notes on it, but it was interesting.
Yeah, I think I did like Like, we had to pick some author from that period and read 3 of their novels.
Apparently she wrote a stage play, like she herself wrote a stage play version of the book to be adapted into stage, which I thought was interesting.
That's interesting.
Okay, so let's jump into...
How long is it? Is it like a 2-night?
Yeah, that I don't know. I loved the book. I had a great time listening to it.
I did. The audiobook was really, really good.
Too long. I should have listened to it on double time the whole way.
I took my time and enjoyed it, and I actually really did enjoy it. Good. It was right when the weather was starting to turn a little bit cooler, so I would wake up early and I would sit in my little armchair with my blanket and my book playing and knit for an hour in the morning, and I just had the greatest time listening to this book.
Lovely.
So I very much enjoyed it, and I wanted to talk. I picked it as a book because my aunt had told me this was her favorite book.
Wow.
And then my cousin was like, oh yeah, it's great, this is her daughter. And I was like, okay, I've never read it. So I wanted to read it. And I can understand why it would be her favorite book, because I felt like, number one, I didn't really know anything about it going into it, and I didn't know the story that well. In my mind, it's one of the questions is it a ghost story? Which in my...
Yes.
The way they market
I've always felt it.
The way they market it, especially the new movie, which I had seen the trailer, I would have assumed it was.
Yes.
But it's not.
It's a psychological ghost story.
Right.
So I went back and listened to the first chapter again before just now, because in the old movie, in the Hitchcock movie, it opens with seeing Manderley burn. So you already know that's going to be the outcome. And so I was like, is that how the book began? Like, the book started with this ghostly telling of her dream visit to Manderley.
But I don't think you know that the house is burned.
No. Yeah. The book keeps it a secret. The movie just hits you on the head with it.
In this synopsis, I skipped one part because I remember reading it and thinking, I don't think that's right. But it says, at the very beginning, we learn has been destroyed by fire. And I'm like, I don't think that happened in the book.
No. Somebody's just telling you the movie.
Spark Notes.
It's like, Spark Notes, get your source right.
That's funny, because that's supposed to save you from your teacher knowing you just watched the movie.
You would have answered that question. Thank you, Spark Notes.
Sucker.
I love the richness of the characters, too.
I thought the characters were well developed, and I liked that I'm usually pretty sensitive to really overly flowery prose, like you were saying.
Yeah.
They weren't overly flowery.
This was enough.
Took a long time to get where we were going.
She took her time with it. That's for sure.
But she's a young girl. She shouldn't rush. So there you go.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, our narrator has a very rich internal life, and I did enjoy that, actually, because the prose wander in the same way my dumb mind does.
It was very realistic. You can tell it's written by a woman because you know exactly what she's thinking all the time.
It wasn't hard to track, for sure.
No. I felt like she was a realistic character because she, for a woman in her state and stature in
age,
life, with no family, no money, why wouldn't you marry this handsome man that was going to take you to this beautiful place to live? And
especially as instead of the 17-year-old or whatever I was when I picked it up, I love the contrast of the narrator over time as she reflects, and she's clearly seasoned and mellowed, and maybe does she love her life now? Right. This hotel living, and the radio's too exciting for that.
Right.
So this is
the wireless.
I can see that there's. I'm reading a little bit of the afterword, and it ties what was going on with the author's life when she wrote this. At the time, she was going through a really hard time. Her adored father, but dominant father, had died. She was pregnant with a second child. While she was planning the book, and she had to be away from Cornwall that she loved so much because her husband had accepted a post out in Egypt. So she's home, desperately homesick. She is longing for what it says her home by the sea in Cornwall that was like a pain under the heart continually. She was so unhappy and then she hated having to do the small talk and the endless receptions. So in some ways she was very much like this young girl who did not fit in with the neighbors, having to talk about, oh yeah, when are you going to have the ball? And she was so great this, and she was so great that. And Oh, I'm sure you'll be happy, dear. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like a psychological ghost story, like the haunting of the person who comes before you, and
it's not literally haunted by the ghost of Rebecca, but the memory of her,
like any person marrying and living in the house that the previous wife had been in, whether that was from divorce or from death. All the regular day-to-day stuff of that other person had been marked into the groove of that house.
I have a stepmother-in-law, and when my would-have-been mother-in-law passed away and my father-in-law got remarried, the first thing she did was redecorate the house, so I can understand why she would do that. Yeah. It's hard to live in a place that looks and feels so much like somebody else and somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
And you feel like you might not be able to live up to. So one of my first question is, du Maurier admitted that her heroine has no name because she could never think of an appropriate one for her, which is in itself a telling comment. What effect does it have on the novel that the heroine has no first name?
Well, I never noticed it.
Oh, I was wondering.
I didn't until about halfway through, and I was like, what the hell is this girl's name, actually? No, actually, I noticed earlier, because he says something about, like, oh, your name is so interesting. And I thought, am I crazy that I don't remember what her name is?
This is the second time we've read a book with no names to the narrator.
And nobody else in the household, they just called her Mrs.
That's De Winter. Appropriate.
Yeah.
It's completely appropriate.
Yeah.
That's real. And the woman that she was working for as a companion had her own names for her, but never actually called her by her name.
Yeah. I don't know if she ever referred to her by any name.
Yeah, I think that was just cleverly left out of the dialogue, that she didn't ever call her anything.
Because when you're only two people in a room, like I keep trying to explain to my children, you don't have to use someone's name or title all the time.
So it's a very interesting dynamic. She, throughout the story, she's not really given an identity,
right?
But the other woman's identity is screamed at her all the time.
It's the name of the book,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And do you have to name yourself? I mean, that's the part of this book being so in the narrator's point of view, like 100% narrator point of view. There is very limited.
So I have a snippet of information here which says, in the Victorian era, most novels centered around one person took that person's name as their title. Oh. Male-centric novels used both their first and last name, like David Copperfield.
Right.
In female-centric novels, usually only the first name was used, since most novels ended with a marriage, changing the woman's last name.
Oh.
So Emma. Jane Eyre is titled after the book's narrator and uses both her first and last name, whereas Rebecca is titled after the dead wife and only uses her first name, which I thought was pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It also goes into this other question I have that was, hold on. How is gender used in this novel? So Rebecca, is she feminine? Is she more of a masculine energy? And the narrator, and what power can we see in accompanying the gender roles in this story? So
I think it depends on who was describing her.
But she herself mentioned
like
how she could act like a man. She did whatever she wanted. She slept with whoever she wanted. She did whatever. She was going to live her life exactly how she wanted to.
Yeah, very masculine.
Which was much more
for that time.
Yeah, acceptable as a male than as a female in that time. Whereas our narrator is like the epitome of like a young girl,
ingenue.
Right.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting.
But she lacked, or at least in her awareness of herself, she lacked the elegance and grace. I think Rebecca was a chameleon. She played to who her audience was, right? Mm-hmm. We eventually learned to Mrs. Danvers, she's this child to be cared for. For Maxim, she's a villain.
Right. A psychopath.
Kind of a control freak to all the men, including the estate manager.
Right, in the way she wanted to use them.
Right. What she wanted out of them.
I mean,
and yet she must have needed a break from all of that, because she took on the old boathouse.
I was gonna say that's why she had her little house, her cottage out at the beach.
Because it's exhausting trying to manage everybody else's life to your pleasure.
You don't think Rebecca had exactly the life she wanted, though? Like,
I think she did, but I think she needed to take a breath from time to time. I mean, wow, she never took a breath alone.
To Rebecca, I sense.
Uh-oh. That seems like a red flag to me.
For a minute, I was too. When the ending was different than or at least than my brain expected, because I
was
don't
sympathetic to her until I realized that the boathouse was also the place where she met up with everybody.
Well, when Maxim
instead of taking them
to us early, the moonlight picnics, like there's very little double entendre there. Like, it's a light.
Okay,
light
so
veil.
maybe part of me really identifies with the unnamed heroine because I actually thought.
Let's learn more dynamics about Karin here.
I thought, how romantic, a moonlight picnic.
Oh, not with her husband.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Also, she was an extremely capable sea person, at the boat, which is another thing that women would not have necessarily.
Well, so this novel of its time, 1938. I mean, Daphne du Maurier is no fool. She's purposefully illustrating these two women in the purposeful way she has painted them. Mm-hmm. And for me, there's some time where Rebecca may not be the villain that she's portrayed. Like, we're trying to root for her murderer and his new wife who's trying to help him along the way. That's not great. The reason that we dislike some women in the public eye is because of the way other women treat or describe them. Mm-hmm. So
she was very ahead of her time to have control over her own life and her own story. I mean, she was a manipulative, horrible person, it seemed like.
Yeah. She tricked her husband into killing her so she wouldn't suffer.
Exactly.
And exactly what I do. I'm like, I have a terminal illness. I'm going to trick my husband into murdering me.
Because I do not want to suffer. Yeah. And honestly, I've spent my whole life working for this image, and I'm not about to let sickness destroy that.
I want everybody so thin, though, which was
she probably was already thin.
As my dad used to say, and sort of achieved. Live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse.
Yep.
So, I mean,
that was, I think, her motto.
Yeah. Drowned at sea, it's not going to look so good.
Then when we talk about the housekeeper.
Mrs. Danvers is the best. She's so villainous.
She's so creepy.
Yeah.
Like, she's just, like, going in exactly the sort of person she's gonna be.
Yeah.
Like, you think you know.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
No, you're
never
not
wrong.
But you never quite understand why she is the way that
she was so devoted. And
I think it speaks to later. The culture. Yeah, the culture of when we learned that she was her nanny and followed her all the way through to adulthood.
She basically was mother to this. And she admired her strength and her I don't care F you attitude to the world. Mm-hmm. So which is something she as a woman in her position could never do. So maybe she admired the freedom that she she
might have felt some ownership for it too.
Because she basically raised her,
helped bring her up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, it was interesting. The contrast between the book and the movie and stuff, and comparing, because I watched the movie pretty soon after I had finished the book, and Mrs. Danvers was one of the characters I felt that in the movie was actually pretty much as
spot on. Yeah.
And the actress, what's her name? Kristen, I can't remember. Whoever her
played her to perfection.
Job.
Yeah.
Well, those evil ladies are probably the most fun to play.
Yeah,
right?
I know, right? Yeah, she was so creepy because you like when she started like crying and like just like standing in the room with everybody and she's just like losing her mind and you're like, what is happening? Or when she's like trying to convince Mrs. De Winter to jump out the window and kill herself, and she almost does.
I know.
Because this poor girl doesn't know what the hell's going on.
In a sense, I can see how Rebecca got to be the way she was because she was raised by Mrs. Danvers.
Right.
Was it when Mrs. Danvers is like,
I wonder who influenced who, though.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's hard to chicken and egg,
do you
man.
remember? Is it The Good Son? Do you guys remember that movie? It's so way back.
That was the Macaulay Culkin.
It's Macaulay Culkin
and his brother.
Oh yeah, he plays the little brother.
Karin.
Yeah, he plays the little brother, but he plays the Hobbit's little brother. Why can't I think of that guy's name? The eyes, the blue eyes.
Yep. The Hobbit.
Yeah, Frodo. He plays.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Not the other Hobbit.
This poor actor. He
Oh my God, he's made millions.
Oh my God.
And no one knows his name.
But do you guys remember the good
Elijah Wood?
Elijah Wood, yes.
Oh my God. Wow.
So yeah, Elijah Wood and Macaulay Culkin.
What are we talking about?
Evil Children was where I was going.
Okay.
I mean, Mrs. Danvers clearly has her chops. Like,
yes.
you know, oh, look at that beautiful painting. I think maybe you should look at that beautiful painting for your fancy dress. Yeah. And I always
totally
forget.
set her up, and then the way the actress's gleeful smile of ha ha ha.
I totally
it's just like, oh,
forget
she's
that
so good.
In Britain, they mean like a dress up party. When
right.
Like a costume party. When they say fancy dress. I'm like, oh, fancy dress.
Put on my fancy dress.
Weren't people in costumes?
They were.
They were, okay.
Yeah, a costume party. But I forget that. Like, you know.
Right,
Rebecca
they don't call it a costume party. They call it a fancy dress party.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did appreciate in the movie that Beatrice and her husband had different costumes than they did in the book.
Oh, good, yes. A little problematic these days.
Okay, this is a funny question that I think will lead to some good conversation. Did you find anyone in the book likable?
Maybe. Let me think for just a second. Frank.
I love
real
Frank.
nice.
Frank.
Oh, poor
and
Frank.
The guy who lives, the simple man who lives down on the shore, Ben. Yeah.
Beatrice's sister.
I did
I
like
like Beatrice because you know what? If
I
it
love
weren't
Beatrice.
For Beatrice and her role in the storytelling, we would never know anything. Right. We would never know why the white dress upset Maxim. Right. We would never know.
She was good for some exposition.
Did you catch that Beatrice was the older sister?
Huh? Yeah, because
they're bossy boss.
She's 45 and he was 42.
Yeah. No, I did love her. She was
she
was such a good like you really wanted this poor girl to, like, she's just holding on to, like, a scrap of affection that she can get from Maxim, and that's all she wants.
She's like,
it's just someone to be nice
to her. I like the dog, but it's fine.
Exactly. I'll just
let it
the dog
pat my head.
She just needs some love so badly, so when Beatrice and Frank are nice to her, I'm like, oh, Beatrice and Frank are so nice. And Giles, is that his name?
Yes.
I love that Beatrice could see through Rebecca. Every bit.
Mostly.
Yeah. Like, it must, when you learn what Rebecca's like, it changed. It makes me wonder, like, everyone must have really enjoyed our narrator. She must have been a breath of fresh air. If she were not just simply a wallflower. Like, if anyone got an impression of her, she must have been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. She says, Beatrice tells our heroine, you are so very different from Rebecca, which is like, yeah, you know she doesn't like Rebecca.
Yeah,
you learn she doesn't like Rebecca.
But you can hear it differently, like a re-listening to this might be interesting.
I can see why.
At 1.35.
But everybody kept saying, you're so different. The preachers...
when you're insecure, like,
she
how
goes
do you
to
hear
think
that?
like, I'm not like, she could never live up to it. Whereas, like you were saying, she's probably a breath of fresh air for everybody, where it's like, oh my god. Well, for the people who were closer to her, I would assume, not the townsfolk who only saw what she wanted them to see, right?
Yeah.
Frank Crowley also says that kindliness, sincerity, and modesty are worth far more to a man, to a husband, than all the wit and beauty in the world. So what do you think he's trying to say to her? Like,
you're nice.
Right.
You're not running around sleeping around on Maxim.
I mean, he knows, because she tried to proposition him to be like, hey, you could come to my boathouse too, so he knows this woman.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he went to the boathouse.
No, he didn't. That was just a accusation that Flabelle was making to unstudy him.
I always thought that poor Frank had succumbed.
I don't think he did.
Because he's too loyal to Maxim.
Right.
Oh,
like
that makes sense.
Stated again and again that he's completely loyal to Maxim.
Right.
And like on the other side, you realize his reticence to reveal things to the narrator is part of that. Not so much to keep her in dark, but to be loyal to Maxim.
His loyalty to Maxim is equal to Danvers' loyalty to Rebecca.
Right,
it's
but
almost
like in
devotion.
a healthy way. Like who gets hurt by Frank's devotion.
Frank can see through what's going on, even though Max has not told him. He knows that he murdered Rebecca.
Could he have been down on the shore? Maybe he's the other. Maybe he's another witness.
He could have been. Yeah, and he knows exactly what Rebecca was doing because she tried to do it with him. So I think you have more sympathy for him and Max's relationship than you do for Danvers and Rebecca, right?
Well, they're two of a kind,
right?
You know, each of them is two of a kind.
But I think about it, even the slow-witted man gets a name.
Yeah,
Billy. Ben.
I didn't remember either.
I didn't tell no one what I saw, did I?
Yeah. Oh, he's so good. I was so heartened when he calls in. He's like, "Nope, I saw nothing. I
don't know anything.
That lady's gone, right?"
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're like, "Yay,
can't
Ben.
hurt me anymore."
Oh yeah, baby. Poor guy.
Mean to people's children.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't actively dislike a lot of people in the book. I just didn't really love anyone.
Right. I mean,
although I really disliked, but also loved at the same time, Mrs. Van Hopper, because she was just fun. I mean, you hated her because she was obnoxious.
Yeah.
But, you know.
She's the reason they had the fancy dress ball. Right?
No, she's the lady she worked for.
Oh,
the busybody socialite lady.
No, I don't like her.
No, you don't like her, but she's fun.
Reflects back. And she's like, "Oh my God, she's gonna see it in the papers." And she's like, "Oh, that poor girl's husband murdered his first wife. I knew he wasn't right the whole time."
But when you do watch the latest version, I love the actress that plays her.
Good.
You will love her.
Yep.
What else have I seen her in?
I don't know.
I know I've seen her in other things. Similar kind of character. She's fantastic.
Okay, as long as you get to work, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I enjoy these stories of, British country life. But, I love, it's Anne Dowd. She's amazing.
Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, she's in
Handmaid's Tale, that's it.
She's in The Leftovers.
Oh my gosh.
She is real good.
Yeah.
Heredity.
She was great.
Yeah.
That's true. I know her from Handmaid's Tale, and she was like a Mrs. Danvers in that one.
She's so good.
So devoted to her cause.
Yeah. Oh, in The Leftovers, she's very dynamic. That's a good show.
I will look for that one because I am a huge Anne Dowd fan.
Now that you know her name.
Now that we know her.
Now that I remember. As soon as you said her name, I'm like, oh, that's her name.
What's her name? Is my favorite actress.
A really good character actress.
She is.
Once you're aware of her, you will see her pop up all over the place. And she's had a good last 5 to 10 years. She's very good.
How do you view the destruction of Manderley? Is it horrific or freeing or justified vengeance on Rebecca's part? How would the De Winters have had a fulfilling life at Manderley had it not burned?
No.
Yes, they would have.
I don't think they would have.
That girl is clay. She was ready to become the clay.
Okay,
to be molded into the next thing.
It's not her I would have worried about, him.
Yeah.
Because Manderley was not really his place anymore because he had let Rebecca take it over and change everything. So even when he came back to it, he was still seeing everything about it. All the decorative details. She had her hand in changing everything.
Right, but I mean, they still had all the original furniture and everything packed away, and I would have liked to believe that him and, I'm just going to call her what's her name because she doesn't have a name, could have made it a place of their own. I mean, I understand.
I guess.
In the new movie, they changed the ending, and Danvers is the one who burns the house down, and she admits to it. She's like,
"Oh, they catch her," because of course Danvers.
Well, I mean, are you gonna watch it? I could spoil it for you.
Don't tell me.
Okay, so it's her fault that it happened.
There's more exposition because
it is a very
Danvers
satisfying ending.
I don't think it is obvious because I didn't know.
Why would she clear out? Okay, I just listened to the last chapter.
Right.
So
I mean, she would clear out because she knows that She's not welcome there, and she has no hold over the place anymore.
You think there's some ambiguity?
I think it could be read either way. I mean, yes, you can obviously say she left the house burned down. Oh, it was definitely her that did it.
Oh, I think she lit the fire.
Right. I mean, you could think that, but I could also see it as being like some mysterious.
But she also made a clue earlier that Rebecca had, because she would. Now I can't remember if it was something I read or something I watched.
Okay, sorry.
Never mind.
Follow it.
When you watch it, let me know, because then we'll see if you...
Do you think that it was right that Maxim was absolved of any crime? You were rooting for it to happen, but...
He still killed her.
I think Colonel Julian knew what was up.
He still killed her thinking she had a baby.
I think he's daft.
But he still killed her thinking that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
That's... It could be a crime of passion.
Right, it wasn't not his child.
Yeah, it was
supposedly.
definitely a crime of passion.
Okay, but if she was really pregnant, he's killing her and her unborn child.
Sure.
Yeah, but that was Rebecca's design, was to leave him with that kind of guilt.
I get that, but I'm looking at what his side of it was.
No, I understand.
Yeah, he's living in guilt that is destroying him.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. So
I don't think he comes out unscathed. I'm glad he doesn't get formally punished, because we learned that it was by design.
Right.
And when he was with when he was with the new Mrs. De Winters, he kept her at a distance because of his burden.
Right.
So he was paying. So he was paying the course.
Girls, if you're listening to this and you're an unmarried young woman, spend a little more time getting to know your potential husband.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew I wanted to marry my husband 4 months of dating, but I had actually known him quite a long time before that.
Yep.
And then we spent a year making sure that was the decision we wanted to make.
Yeah.
Don't marry your prince immediately. Watch Frozen or something.
Watch all of Frozen. Don't just watch the first half, because then you'll be like, oh, so cute.
We finished each other's sandwiches.
I went into it not knowing the plot of I hadn't seen the movie or anything, so I can say that I was legitimately surprised at the plot twist, where I was like, what? The only thing I knew was I had seen the trailer for the Netflix one before I decided to read the book, so I had a vague idea, but
who the players may be.
Right, but I had a great time reading it, so
it's been a long time since I'd seen the movie, and I'd only seen it once, so I didn't fully remember going in. So
very fascinated with this. Mm-hmm. And now, when you remind me that it's Hitchcock, it's because there was a period of time I was gonna watch all the Hitchcock movies, and I was fascinated.
That time never stops. You should always still.
Right.
Absolutely. It's like the Twilight Zone. It never gets old.
Right. That's absolute truth. And
Night Gallery. That's a different story.
The Night Gallery.
Night Gallery was after Twilight Zone. Rod Serling also had Night Gallery, which was
I don't know about that.
more horror and less ironic twist.
Interesting.
Where should we go from here? So the costume ball, I knew was a big player in the story. I didn't know why,
but you knew there's no way that Mrs. Danvers was really gonna help her.
No, I had an idea as to. I knew she was trying to convince her to wear this dress and to be Catherine. Yeah. I didn't know why, that it was because Rebecca had worn the same dress the year before. So when the heroine got the surprise that she did, I also had the surprise at the same time. Where I was like, why are they being so mean to her? She was so excited about her dress.
I love the description of her getting ready. She's I was like a little girl.
Yeah. So I did enjoy that, and I liked the like you were saying, the telling of her, acting like a young girl and being so excited for the ball, and
because it's the strongest emotion you see from her, her excitement about it and how particular she's being about the wig.
And it's the first time she feels strong enough to hold a secret and to be part of the
teasing Frank and Maxim and saying, you're not gonna get the surprise of your life. You're not gonna recognize me, and you're like, oh, what does that mean?
Oh, girly.
Oh, you poor sucker.
I know, that poor girl. It was hard.
It's one more reason to hate Mrs. Danvers. You hate her, but you love her.
No, you just she's a great villain.
So you love to hate her. I am saying we love to hate her.
Something to appreciate.
one of my questions was, what kind of character is Max, and why, more specifically, why does a man of his stature fall in love with the young heroine, and what draws him to her?
I think it's this, because I thought about that a lot. First of all, I mean, he says it many times. He was looking for a young wife.
Yes.
He wanted a fresh start.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think there's a little psychology to that midlife time where you hearken for the youth you have left behind. And so he can recapture it by the social norm of marrying a woman half his age.
His first marriage was a sham, so he never got to experience the fun of,
actually
first
being
young love.
But so he is an old.
Yeah, he's 40.
He's old,
and
she's 3 years older than me.
I don't know how old.
Yeah, we don't know, but she's young. You know, it's
she's like maybe 19, 20, somewhere in there. I would think.
I would even say, if she's a lady's maid, she could be 17, 18.
I don't think she's that young. You don't think she's that young? Because there's something about her. She has this little sliver of poise.
For some reason, 19 is stuck in my head, and I don't know if they actually ever mention her age.
They don't. Okay. No, it's vague, just like her name.
But 19 was kind of,
that was sort of, maybe that's just what I came up with in my mind. And
I could take 19.
Could be her father.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just all agree with that.
Yeah, he was such a jerk most of the time.
Right.
Yeah. And you don't know why, except that in my mind, I was like, well, it's just, it's the style of the times and the age difference. I can understand. See this being a legitimate character, but then you learn why he is the way that he is, and you're like, oh, okay, well, he's burned by the fact that he murdered his first wife and trying to keep it from everybody. I can understand why he's a little distant,
I think he even says, like, yeah, if you were if you were 38, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
She's like, I wish I was old and poised.
And he says to her multiple times, especially after the whole, revelation of what happened, that he misses that, funny look in her, innocent look on her face, and that's why I think he was drawn to her, is that she's such a blank slate and, just a young, happy person that he's like, okay, this is what I need right now.
Right. I hate that about him.
It's very self-serving.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think a lot of men approach younger women that way.
Sure.
How can you make me feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't stand being alone anymore, so he's like, I need to take you with me, and I'm sorry for everything that's going to happen to you when I do, but sorry, I need a friend.
So it makes you wonder, how long was he married to Rebecca?
Oh,
I think at least 10 years, maybe.
Which means he was still...
You have to imagine she was a young, lovely thing, because the fashion would be to be married pretty young.
He would have been then in his 30s. He would have been
if she
still
was
older than her.
They never say Rebecca's age, but
no.
And 38 is just a number that the narrator pulls out. Mm-hmm. So let's say she's in her mid-30s. So maybe there's a 10-year age gap.
Yeah, maybe
I had a way older boyfriend for a time, and he was like that in ways of I'm gonna take advantage of your youth.
Sure. That tends to be how it works.
And
yeah, no bueno.
No.
Yeah, it was interesting to see his character change, and him in the movie was obviously more likable, because it's a movie. Because you don't get a whole lot from him at the beginning either. I mean, when they're on their honeymoon and stuff, it's like, oh yeah, that's nice and cute, but he's never fawning over her, or he's in love with her. It's just it's so conventional.
I'm very fond of you.
He went to the grocery store and was like, that's the brand I want.
Exactly.
And he put her in the basket and took her back to Manderley.
This will totally suffice for my needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the book, or in the movie, he turns into a total puppy at the end. After the revelation, he's he totally needs her. Whereas, not so much.
I get that from the older version. That he's kind of a shell of a person almost.
Sure.
But I also think the burden of carrying his secret weighed on him. There's a point where when you're released from that secret, the weight of it that was kind of prematurely aging you, even if you were older. I feel like when the release of that brought some youth back to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I can't imagine, excuse me, holding on to a giant secret like that and it not tearing you up inside.
That you murdered 2 people.
Sure. Yeah. Well, only one. He thought
but
it was
in
2.
his mind, like, especially with murder, intent is
right.
The key there.
Yep. What did we think of Mr. Jack Favell?
Oh, he's disgusting.
Yeah.
I love that in that description it points out first cousin.
Yeah, it's pretty wow.
Wow,
it's in the
your
30s,
cousins?
that's not that long ago. It's not okay then.
No.
Because the book makes a point to tell you multiple times, this is her first cousin.
Yeah,
and you're like,
gross.
This is like...
And then when he actually says, potential husband.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
I'm like, an incestual relationship. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's like,
They're
that's
both
just
terrible
wrong.
people.
Yeah,
and they deserved each other.
Your cousins can be more related to you than your own siblings.
Right.
Because of the genetic crapshoot.
So weird.
Icky.
Yeah. Really gross. Yeah, he was so sleazy.
That is an excellent word.
In my mind, he looked, you know how you come up with like what they look like? Before even they described him to me, and it was completely different because they mentioned him being like, he could be seen as handsome.
Yeah.
Like he's a good looking man. In my mind he was like some greasy, like sleazy, gross, which I'm sure he was, but it's just different.
The inner spirit
right
through.
Exactly.
But like her, he would be charming when he needed to be.
Oh, sure. I'm sure they cut quite a rug together in London.
I think they worked well together. Like I said, they certainly deserved each other.
He certainly, and took advantage of the new Mrs. De Winter's naivete. Oh.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, that's how bad he was. She understood he was no good.
Right.
Like, this will be our little secret, little girl.
And she knows.
Knew that's not okay.
That's not okay. I know, but she didn't have it's just her youth.
I don't know if she ever knows who to trust.
No.
Like, does she all the way trust Maxim to say, "Oh, look, this guy I knew he was here,"
She doesn't. She doesn't want to tell him because she knows that he's gonna be mad, and he doesn't want him to be be mad at her. Yeah.
Because she's the puppy, and she doesn't want to volunteer to be kicked.
Yeah. Okay, so the last question says, return to the beginning of the book. How would you put into words or explain the sense of loss and exile that permeates the tone of the opening? Maybe, Anne, you can speak to this since you literally just read that part.
Yeah.
Because I intended to go back and read the first chapter because I didn't really remember it when I started. It was a long book, so.
Yeah. The first chapter just describes her dream and how nature had retaken
the house.
Yeah, the grounds. Yep. And it's almost like that wild spirit of Rebecca has taken, like when you're looking back, having just finished, it's like that wild spirit of Rebecca has really taken over the grounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my mind, they were much older then, but I don't know how much time has passed between then and now.
Well, wouldn't it be so sad for her to still be so young and living such an old life?
I mean, it makes me sadder to think that they've been living this way for many years and have not settled at a place that they like, Yeah, I would be interested to know how long exactly it had been.
Back to the question of, like, do you think they could have had a good life together? Like, Max is so much more tied to that place than Rebecca's influence on it, because it's his ancestral home. That's what strikes me strange.
Because he's got money, he could have rebuilt it, but it's almost like burning your bridges. It's past.
Sure,
he doesn't want it, for him to go back and try to rebuild it. Still would not be as clean slate.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, because he would still be around the villagers and the town folk and all the other people.
Still want to talk about,
yeah,
and especially after all the drama and the press of the
That's
Inquisition
true.
And the finding of the body. Like, I can imagine not wanting to be around that after.
But
all
he
of that.
did. He was racing home. It's like
yeah, that's true.
He wanted what the narrator was dreaming about in the car, like that life of. She would go and make the changes. She would be the mistress of the house. They'd have children. They'd have a great life together. Like, it's like he's racing back to that potential.
Yeah.
And they never get it.
No, but I also think that the reality of the body being found and the scandal of the trial, because there'll be plenty of people that'll say, there will always gossip behind their back, or sometimes not behind their back, that'll always I think it would just still not.
Rubbish. Queen of rubbish.
They could never. I think once it burned, it was a cutting of the ties.
Yeah. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I could see myself rereading it, which is a lot for me because I don't typically ever care to reread a book. But I could see myself being like, oh yeah, that was fun. I should read that again. But
I'm glad to have revisited it. I'm looking forward to the next movie.
Yeah. I'm excited to see if I can ever find where to watch the original one. So.
It was very good.
Well, that brings us to our next pick, which is Anne's turn to choose our next book. So,
all right. So then I reviewed my old choices, which I didn't even remember what was in here.
Right. I looked back at the old ones. I'm like, I don't even know what this book is.
I still support them. So we'll see what I choose.
Okay. She's reaching into her bucket.
Oh, good. Okay, good. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern.
Okay.
This is kind of a fanciful book, I think. It's been a long time wish for me to read this one. It's 13 hours and 40 minutes. Sorry about that.
Another one of those?
Yep. But it should
what is
be
it about?
Really good. Let me just bring it up real quick.
I have not.
This author has 2 books. It's this and The Starless Sea, which is also in there. This is the summary from Audible.
Okay.
The circus arrives without warning. No announcements precede it. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. Within the black and white striped canvas tents is an utterly unique experience full of breathtaking amazements. It is called Les Cirques des Rêves. And it is only open at night. But behind the scenes, a fierce competition is underway. A duel between 2 young magicians, Celia and Marco, who have trained since childhood expressly for this purpose by their mercurial instructors. Unbeknownst to them, this is a game in which only one can be left standing, and the circus is but the stage for a remarkable battle of imagination and will. Despite themselves, however, Celia and Marco tumble headfirst into love, a deep, magical love that makes the lights flicker and the room glow warm whenever they so much as brush hands. True love or not, the game must play out, and the fates of everyone involved, from the cast of extraordinary circus performers to the patrons, hang in the balance, suspend as precariously as the daring acrobats overhead. Written in rich, seductive prose, this spellcasting novel is a feast for the senses and the heart.
Oh, it's read by Jim Dale. That'll be fun.
Oh, that's the Harry Potter reader. Oh, this will be very good.
I just got it on Audible. I can't wait to read it.
All right. I think I have this one in the flesh, but I'm also kidding. I mean, Jim Dale is one of the best readers.
I know. Why wouldn't you? He does all the voices. It's so fun to listen to.
So good.
I know some people have very strong opinions about which is better, but I'm strongly a Jim Dale fan.
I'm Team Jim Dale. One of my favorite stories is about Stephen. The other one, Stephen.
I don't even remember.
The other guy who reads Harry Potter, who's very funny, and I'm generally very entertained by him. He couldn't say Harry pocketed it. And he was kind of derisive to J.K. Rowling when he was tapped to read the first novel. He's like, oh, great, a children's book. Okay.
Right.
And then it became kind of a thing.
Stephen Fry.
Thank you, Stephen Fry. And she put that in every book that followed.
That Harry pocketed it?
Yes. And then Harry pocketed it.
That's so good.
And I love, we've listened to all the books as a family, and it's always kind of like a fun, if the kids and I had a drinking game, it would be, wait for that.
Yeah. I'll have to look for that next time I reread them. Well, does anybody have any other books they've been reading, enjoying? Any recommendations for anything before we go?
Yes. Hold on. I gotta pull it up.
I am currently in 2 book clubs now, so we're doing this one. And then I was mentioning to my aunt, who recommended this book to me, that I got halfway through Little Women and never finished it. Finished it last year. She was like, "Oh yeah, I was gonna reread it this year." And then my sister wanted to read it. My mom wanted to read it. My cousins who have read it before that. So we're doing a FaceTime thing once a week and going through the book together, which I'm very happy about. So I'm currently reading Little Women.
Nice. I'm still working on Little Women right now too. Actually,
it's a lot of book.
Yeah, but it's. I mean,
it's so good.
You can.
I haven't memorized because I've only read it. I like all of the series. There's Little Women,
I've
Little Men,
Little
Good
Men.
Wives.
Joe's Boys.
Joe's Boys is like the fourth kind of book, but it's not the full book. But really, Good Wives talks more about the school that she sets
I got halfway through. Well, I got through part 1 of the book. There's 2 parts, obviously. I got through part 1, and then I didn't go back to it. So I started back at the beginning. So I just got, the pleasure of reading
book, But it's very good knitting reading.
Like, it is.
I'm using like a little book clip, and I keep it clipped open, and I'm really reading it. You pick something very simple you don't have to look at very much.
So that's what I've been reading recently.
I finished a book called The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and it doesn't follow our rules, so because I have read it, but I really think that you guys would like it.
The Invisible Life of
Addie LaRue.
Write it down.
I kept listening to it thinking, I wonder what they'll think about this.
Right.
It's by V.E. Schwab, and she has a few series that are quite good. She kind of falls in young adults. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is going to be produced. I don't know if it's a limited series or a movie. It was very entertaining.
I like a limited series because you can get more in depth into the characters in a way that it's what they used to call a mini-series, but without the commercials.
But they're still a little longer than mini-series, it seems. But I'm enjoying V.E. Schwab a lot. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep going back to an author sometimes because some of them can be very formulaic. But her writing is pretty
cool,
engrossing.
I will remember that next time I'm looking for a new book.
It was very good.
Cool.
So I've read a few books because I'm like...
You're a voracious reader.
Sometimes I am. Sometimes I've been... Was I reading Little Fires Everywhere last time?
Yes. I remember
okay. I did finish it. And I started to read Every Tool's a Hammer. But I put that on hold.
Yeah. But isn't that surprisingly good?
I started, not. I mean, like the first page.
But, okay.
But
that's Adam Savage's book.
I have been reading 2 other books, How to Be Less Stupid About Race, which is really good. And actually the it's fiction. It's nonfiction, but the Undocumented Americans is really, really good. It's it's first person experience of someone of a DACA recipient, and even the trauma that she had from, and how it formed her life, the abandonment issues of she was left behind in Ecuador when her parents came here, and she didn't get to come here until she was like 7. And even her dad's experience from being someone who was a very skilled person to being reduced to a day labor, and just the effects it's really interesting. Like, one thing I did not know, did you know that the people that cleaned up Ground Zero were undocumented Americans? Were undocumented workers. The people who got the contracts were companies run by white men, who then had subcontractors who then got the day laborers. Well, and they were not.
Most of America is run
that's the way
on.
Most things are built.
Yeah, they were knee deep
economy.
in chemicals and stuff, and no masks, So it's really eye opening about how our country really has profited off the labor while still denying it. So, anyway,
that's one of
really,
the things America
really
does well. Deny other people's humanity.
That is very true. Yeah. On a different note, I remembered a different book that I'm not finished yet, but I will recommend it because it's been a fun alternative. I'm reading The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. Which is a very light, fluffy, romancy, fun read. So if you want something that's like not too much brain power, also kind of a little racy, but a fun, quick little read. It's very cute, and she has a whole bunch of them. So I just started the first one. She wrote The Wedding Date, and then there's The Wedding Party, The Proposal, one called Party of Two, and then there's like a Christmas one called The Royal Holiday, which I'm excited to get to. So they're very fun. So I could recommend those too.
All right.
Other than that, I think we are good. So next month we will be back here again to read The Night Circus by someone whose name I don't remember.
Erin something.
Morgenstern.
Thank you.
There you go, Erin Morgenstern.
Her other
Morgan.
in there too.
I think it's Morgenstern. It's
Let's
Morgan
double check.
something.
Yeah.
Erin, Erin.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's a girl, so yes.
Okie dokie. Well, we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.